Hello and welcome to the EQI 2.0 Debrief Webinar. I am your host, David Cory from the Emotional Intelligence Training Company, along with my colleague Kim Cairns from the Emotional Intelligence Training Company. We plan to demonstrate for you what a debrief conversation sounds like with an actual client. In this case, we're going to introduce you to Hal. Hal is a manager with an organization, and Hal is going to be played this morning by Mr. Kim Cairns. What we're going to do is we're going to demonstrate what an EQI debrief conversation sounds like. The EQI being, of course, the first scientific measure of EQ in the world, released in 1997 and then updated again in 2011, with the leadership report being the most recent report from the publisher Multi-Health Systems Incorporated out of Toronto, Ontario. And what we're going to do is we're going to carry out this debrief demonstration for you. And then if you have questions at any time, we'd like you to type those into the chat box and send those in to us. Following about 30 minutes, we're going to stop the debrief demonstration and we're going to take your questions. You have the choice of either simply typing in your questions into the chat box, or if you'd like to raise your hand and ask your question, I can actually unmute you for that time period. So when those questions come up for you as we're demonstrating this debrief conversation to you, please type in those questions into the chat box and or jot them down, and we'll take them afterward. Okay, so Kim, are you ready to go?
Yes, Dave.
Okay, so here we go. Kim's going to play the role of Hal. I will play the role of the EQ coach in this situation. And here we go. Welcome, Hal, to this meeting. This meeting, as you may know, is to review the results of the online assessment that you took. You went online, you went through 133 statements, and you told us about how those statements relate to you and your work and your life at this time. We've got a report, and we want to take a look at that report. And of course, Hal, the overall purpose for this is leadership development. We want to help you to improve your overall effectiveness as a leader. And our hope is that by looking at the results of your assessment, we can determine some of those areas that you are doing well in and acknowledge those and understand those more. So that you can leverage those for even greater effectiveness, and then look at some of the areas where you might choose to improve your skills and your competencies so that, again, you can be a better leader and your organization can benefit from your increased skill level. Is that kind of what your understanding was of our meeting today?
Yes, I guess in a vague kind of way. I mean, we've just all been instructed to take this. I've had a chance to just quickly look through the report this morning. Yeah, I'm ready to go.
Okay, all right. Now, just want to remind you, Kim, Hal, I just want to remind you that we have communicated to you in a couple of different messages about the confidential nature of this conversation. And I just want to remind you that what you say to me today is completely confidential, just between us. I don't take any notes. I don't report back to anybody. And you're the only one that sees this report. And then in terms of what you decide that you want to share with others, that will be completely up to you. So, and we can even talk about the benefits of sharing various parts of the report if you wish during our conversation today. How does that sound?
Okay, that sounds quite good. I was a bit concerned that this would just automatically go to my supervisor too. So I'm happy to hear that I'm the only one that's reading it.
Good, good. Now, Hal, just let me ask you a question. How are things going in general with your management role at work? How would you say that things are going for you?
Well, I'd say the phrase pressure cooker comes to mind.
Okay.
Um, I, I just feel like constantly we're being asked to do more with less. And it's just a real challenge. I can't seem to make enough right decisions on any given day.
All right. Okay. So if we could understand more about how that is creating a challenge or creating issues for you, and if you could reduce that feeling of being in the pressure cooker, would that be of benefit to you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Um,
so my hope is that through the awareness that's gained by looking at your results, that you get that, and so we'll take a look at that as we go through the report. Okay, so you can see this is the title of our report here. It is a leadership report, and we're gonna take a look and see what that means for us. So I'm just going to bring up the magnification here, and you'll notice one of the first things, Hal, is that we've got this wonderful model of leadership that we call a model of transformational leadership. And you're going to get this whole report so you can read through the whole thing in detail later on after our conversation. I just want to point out some of the less obvious things to you now. So, one of the dimensions of transformational leadership is the idea of being an authentic leader. So, this idea of authenticity is about being who you really are, being a role model for moral and fair behavior, and being transparent. You know, we like to work for people who do things on the up and up. We feel like we can trust that person. We also appreciate when people share things with us. It's like we're included. We're part of the team, part of what's going on. So that's that authenticity piece. The next dimension is coaching, and this is where you involve yourself with the growth and development of the employees who report to you. How many people report to you, by the way, Hal? I missed that.
I have 10 people that report directly to me.
Okay. All right. So this is about thinking about the ways in which those 10 people can grow and develop and become leaders themselves. The third dimension is, oh, go ahead.
I just, uh, I just want to say, Dave, I guess my notion of leadership is um, there are certain tasks to be done. You receive that information from above, and then you let people know below you that this is what needs to be done in the next period of time. Um, that's really kind of my whole approach to leadership. So this is pretty new to me. These concepts.
Okay, and you're right, Hal. Those are parts of leadership, and I guess what we're acknowledging here today is that things are changing and people are interacting with each other in ways that are kind of different than the beginning of leadership. If you think back and think about the kind of leadership that maybe our parents experienced in the workplace, it was much more, I tell you what to do and you do it. And
Mm-hmm.
we're actually moving away from that style of leadership and more to a kind of a partnering model where we collaborate with each other. And so rather than me telling you what to do and you doing it, it's more about me coming to you and asking you, what do you think is the best way? Because you're actually at the front line. You know more than I do about how to get the work done in the most efficient, most effective way possible. So that's kind of in a nutshell this idea that we're transitioning from old school command and control authoritative leadership to a more collaborative participative model, which is more respectful. People appreciate being included and invited into conversations about decisions that need to be made. And you'll find that people actually get more work done when we use this, what we call the new school leadership style, or 21st century leadership, or contemporary leadership. So that's what we really want to look at, Hal. And then we want to look at the skills and competencies that are required to do that well. And you
Dave,
probably,
Dave, I
yeah.
just have one question here. I'm
Sure.
just wondering if the layer of leadership above me is going to be going through this same process.
Well, yes, in fact, Hal, they are, and we started with the senior executive team, and now we're working our way down, and you can imagine that the change doesn't happen overnight. That we're not all of a sudden turning those people, some of whom have maybe made your life a little bit difficult because of the pressure that they apply to you to get things done. We're not expecting people to change dramatically overnight. We're hoping that little by little through initiatives like this one that we can see some incremental change happen, and hopefully over time that you'll see some changes in the way that people deal with each other, the way that people treat each other, and we're hoping that that becomes again a more respectful and more inviting workplace. So that's what
Okay.
we're hoping to see.
Hmm.
As to whether we see it, that again, it remains to be seen. But this is our hope, and we're going to do that through the ways that we know that people want to be led. Right? I mean, if I asked you to describe the best leader you ever had, Hal, you'd tell me about some of the things that we're going to talk about today.
Okay.
So, insight is the third dimension of our leadership model, and this is where you actually share what you've learned and what your vision of the future is. And we expect that people in leadership positions like you actually have those ideas of the way things could be. And work to change those. And the final one is that you are continually asking, uh, how can we do this better? How can we do this differently? I'm just going to take a quick check of some of the things that people are writing in, just in case there's any issues with the sound. Um, okay, so I've got a comment which is, can we actually increase the volume from our end? So I'm gonna just lean in and speak up a little bit, a little bit more, and maybe Hal can do the same, and hopefully that's going to solve the issue there. So let's carry on and look at this leadership report. Basically, there are two comparisons here in the leadership report, Hal. One, we've compared you with 4,000 other people from throughout North America. So that's one comparison. The other comparison is we've compared you with the top leaders in a sample of leaders that was taken. Leaders tend to score higher on the EQI than the general public. And what you'll see in your scores is what we call the leadership bar, the gold bar. And that is the range of scores of the most effective leaders in this leadership sample. So that's kind of like the target range that we're shooting for. And hopefully, we can talk about how you can get there as well. So if we look at our first score here, Hal, that is the on the executive summary page. If you'll follow along with me, you can see that that in terms of the numbers, those are standard scores, by the way, which simply means that you've been compared with a representative sample of the North American population. 100 is the mean. And so that means that that is where more people than any other number. If you remember your normal curve, that's the very center of the normal curve is that score of 100. And you can see here how that your score of 84, which is your total emotional intelligence score, is lower than the population average and also lower than the leadership bar range as well. So how we want to take a look at why your scores are where they are, and talk about some ideas about whether these are affecting you. First of all, whether you recognize that they are affecting you, and also talk about whether you would like to improve in these various areas. Now we start with your three
That, that
highest.
that's pretty discouraging right off the top, actually, Dave. I'm quite a bit lower than everybody in the population and way lower than leaders.
Well, it all has to do, Hal, with the way that you responded to those statements. So that's what we want to be curious about and wonder about. And I actually have your responses to some of those statements, so we can actually talk about why you chose a particular response versus another one,
Okay.
and hopefully we can understand these scores. So that's really one of our goals today, Hal, is to understand the scores. And if we can do that, then we can decide what you might want to do about those. All right?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so let's look at your three highest scores. Your three highest scores are actually right around the mean of the population mean of 100. So that means that in these areas you're not doing poorly. You're doing okay. Now, the fact that there's a bit of a gap between your scores and the leadership range means that in terms of comparing you with other leaders who are effective leaders, then this could be these areas could be improved. But let's take a look at them and understand them now. So this suggests that you are able to share your thoughts and ideas. And just want to ask you, Hal, is that true? Do you feel like that you are an assertive person?
Well, I feel like my job is to kind of clearly lay out the picture of what needs to be done. Um, so I feel, most of the time okay with that. Although I feel often a lot of turmoil around what directives I'm getting from above, and not necessarily agreeing with those directions, but not really being able to talk about that with my team.
Right,
Um, so I think that, but I don't have any problem stating, okay, this is what the issue is, and this is how we need to resolve it.
right. Yeah. Uh, yeah, that makes sense. And there's a lot of ideas in the text of this report, and just this one sticks out for me right now. And it just says, there may be times when your team is left without a leader who has their back. I'm just wondering if that rings true for you at all.
Um, yeah, I mean, I like to think that I'm trying to support them, but I'm also, I mean, I come from a place of, just get the job done.
Hmm.
No,
Right,
no matter what's going on, just get it done, and know that a lot of people probably aren't going to be happy with the decisions. There's always going to be somebody that's not going to be happy with what's going on.
right. Okay. Okay, well
So
let's
maybe,
let's keep that
yeah,
in mind moving forward, and wonder about whether that's an area to focus in on. Let's look at the fact that your flexibility score is fairly high. Seems to suggest that you adjust well to change, and that you are able to flex and adapt to various situations. Does this seem to fit for you?
well, I think what it feels like is I just constantly have to be uh, shifting around, thinking about what the best direction to go in is.
Right.
So that's kind of how that sounds to me. I mean, I feel that things are constantly shifting, so I need to constantly shift with that.
Right. And then that shifting could be causing you stress, and your score in stress tolerance seems to suggest that um, that you do tolerate stress fairly well with a score of 97. However, the comment there that it suggests that that you maybe could develop this, and be better in those crisis situations that occasionally come up. Does that seem to ring true for you at all?
Yeah, that really rings true. I mean, I think at the end of each workday, I just feel pretty whipped. Um, so there just seems to be that constant cycle, trying to be on top of things during the day and scrambling around, and then by the end of the day, I'm just really don't have much juice left.
Right, right. Let's look at your three lowest subscales, Hal, because sometimes those three lowest are areas where you might just get the biggest bang for your buck if we were to focus in on those and actually help you to improve in those areas. So the first one, it looks like your lowest score of all is reality testing, and I don't know if that makes any sense to you. Would it make sense to you that you'd have a lower score in reality testing?
Well, I mean, one of the things that goes on for me is I'm hesitant to really check out with other people what their perceptions of what's going on is really happening for them. And I think that comes from I'm supposed to be in charge and supposed to know what to do, and and so I'm reluctant to actually have conversations with people about what their ideas are.
Right. Yeah. So things are going on, and you have a perception of the way things are going, or what's going on, and other people seem to have their own perceptions as well. Is that kind of the way it is? And nobody really discusses or talks about these things?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that seems to be the general feel, and I'm just paying way more attention to all the scrambling around that's going on in my own head. So I can see that, yeah, that maybe I could benefit from not concentrating so much on what's going on inside me, and maybe get an idea of what's happening for some other people too.
Right.
The culture doesn't really support that, frankly, but
Right. Yeah, I see a couple of responses here. I just want to ask you about your responses to these statements. For example, in response to "I see situations as they really are," you said that that was only sometimes true for you.
yeah, well, again, I think it's my focus tends to be how does this impact me, and uh, and how can I handle this situation in the moment quickly and have that over with.
Right.
Um, so as you're talking about this, I'm thinking, well, yeah, that's just me believing everything I think.
Well, and it also sounds like you're really in reactive mode, Hal. Does that seem to fit for you?
Yeah, I think I don't necessarily like the sound of the word, but yeah, I think that sums it up.
Yeah, I guess, with this whole leadership initiative, Hal, what we want to help people to do is we want to help move people out of reactive mode and into proactive mode. We want you
Mm,
thinking about, how can we improve this situation? How can we make this better? What can we do so this doesn't happen again? And I guess, Hal, based on your comment about, that's the way things go around here, it sounds like you're in a bit of a reactive culture. And based on our observations and talking to some other of your colleagues, it seems like that's the case. And we really want to move that culture. And what it's going to take to change that culture is everyone starting to think about how we can be more proactive. How can we prevent doing the same thing over and over, making the same mistakes over and over again? So that's going to take everybody starting to think more about, first of all, testing the reality. So, checking things out with others, talking about these issues, and talking about and asking the question, how can we make this better? Is that something that you can see that would really benefit your work area?
well, what kind of sticks out for me in that is, I mean, I feel a bit of encouragement just about having that conversation with my colleagues, so
Right.
that we're all kind of coming from the same place. I mean, that I guess at first it's okay. Do I have to make all these changes in the midst of the same environment going on around me? So I'm encouraged to hear that some of these conversations might be taking place in groups of uh, of us in the company too.
Yeah, and I guess another maybe encouraging thought is that that the people that you report to are having these conversations with coaches, and your peers are having these conversations with coaches. So this is about everybody doing their part to try to change the way things happen in your organization. Let's look at some other of your scores here. Your second lowest score was in impulse control. I'm just wondering, first of all, if that makes any sense to you.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think again, it's having all of these like this avalanche of issues coming my way, and it's just, again, I keep coming back to that word scrambling, but I feels like I'm scrambling all the time, and uh, the impulse, I guess, for me is to just come up with a great solution in the moment, or a great comment in the moment, and I find that oftentimes I'm not really thinking those things through before they're coming out of my mouth.
Well, and this supports what you just told me about reality testing. This idea that you're in reactive mode, and that you're not reacting in a slow, thoughtful way. You're reacting in a kind of a rash, hasty kind of way.
Hmm.
And so we want to really understand that these things work together. These are like 15 different parts of an orchestra, and if these things are not working together well and in harmony, then they're going to create issues. And here we've got some of these skills that are working together in a kind of a negative way. So sort of your lower reality testing, not sort of checking out and not making sure that you're on the same page as everyone else, and then this sort of lack of a thoughtful response, it kind of contributes to some of the negative issues and some of the challenges that you're facing. Now, let me just does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I think so. I guess I mean I have to be honest. I mean I feel like here I am. I'm 45 years old. This is the way I've been operating forever. I guess there's some anxiety about do I even have the capacity to change the way I operate?
Based on my experience of one-to-one coaching with managers, Hal, I would say that you absolutely have the ability to change. It's just whether you want to or not. And we can't change what we're not aware of. So one of the great things about this conversation and about the fact that you actually went online and you were honest in your answers in this with this assessment tool indicates an interest in change. And now we're going through this conversation. We're going to raise your awareness about some of these issues, and hopefully, you choose to change. And but we can't change what we're not aware of. So part of the process, that is this part of the process, is about creating awareness of the need for change. So just keep that in mind as we're talking here.
Okay.
Now, this last lowest low score for you, this self-actualization piece, this is about being involved in what has meaning and purpose for you, and kind of sounds like you being involved in this reactive mode is not very fulfilling and doesn't really have a lot of meaning for you. So the question might be, how could this have more meaning for you? Like, we're not suggesting that you quit and leave, but how could you maybe make it more meaningful for yourself on this job? Because at one time, my guess is you found a lot of meaning in your work.
Yeah, I mean, early on, I think I did in leadership roles. I think again, part of it may be just that here I am at 45, and I just, when I look back, this isn't where I kind of planned to be. I guess I thought I'd be in a happier kind of place than I am right now. I mean, I'm just kind of worn out and plugging along day by day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, well,
So when
let's, yeah.
when I look at that, I guess that isn't. I guess when I look at it with a bit of reality testing, maybe to use a new phrase, is this where I want to stay? And in this mindset, and no, I don't want to stay in this mindset.
Okay. Okay, so we'll absolutely talk about that in our coaching as we move forward, and hopefully we can come up with some ideas for you together in terms of how you might want to maybe shift your focus, and again, uh, look at what aspect of your job has meaning and a sense of purpose for you, and if you can become more involved in that, then that's my guess is that you'll see that your self-actualization will improve. Let me
So
just
we're going to have ongoing conversations.
Yes, yes. In fact, as part of this initiative, we have a series of coaching sessions set up, and so really, what that's about is about together coming up with ways of moving forward in an incremental way. So little baby steps that you can take in between our conversations, and then we can follow up and talk about how that went for you in improving in a certain area. I might give you some homework, for example, even today. I might give you some homework, and then we'll check in on that homework later on, and hopefully it's moving in a direction that feels good to you.
Okay,
Now,
that I mean that feels really good to hear that. I just
okay.
I think I was feeling a bit of pressure, but I'm gonna have to make all these changes. How am I gonna do that? But
Yeah, no, we're not going to we're not going to, hand this back to you and say go make all these changes on your own. We're gonna walk with you a ways, and that's really one of the best ways that we have seen sustainable change in individuals and organizations is through coaching, and so it's more and more the case that that really effective managers have coaches and someone to have these kinds of conversations with about their personal and individual challenges, and hopefully, together we can come up with uh, some um, some ways for you to move forward in a way that feels good to you.
okay, okay,
Let me just take a look at a couple of the statements relating to self-actualization for a moment. For example, you said in response to "I am driven to achieve," you said that that was only sometimes true for you. So tell me a little bit about that.
well, I mean when I think back to how I answered that question, there was a bit of just really what I'm driven to is to make it through each day and through each week. Um, I guess just survive, I guess, rather than thrive.
Right, and again, that's that reactive mode that you've fallen into. It's kind of like you've adapted to your environment. We all adapt to our environment. And now it's a question, now that it's coming into your awareness, the question comes, is that something that you're interested in changing? And if so, how might you take some steps to make those changes? So that's really, what we want to talk about. Let's look at more of your scores and then see if we can't sort of tie a few things together. Is that okay with you?
Sure.
Okay, so just before we dive into your scores, let's take a quick look at this model of emotional intelligence. So you've heard us talk about this model or this idea of emotional intelligence. That really is just the idea that, and at the center of the model is the idea that our brains process emotions and emotional information. And then there are a number of skills and competencies related to that. And that's where we get the scores. And that's what we want to try to improve. And we're trying to work towards that outer ring, which is where we see well being, workplace performance, emotional and social functioning. These are the kinds of things that are going to be key in terms of communication and relationships, which is what leadership is all about. So you can take a look back at all these definitions and look at this model a little bit later on. Let's take a look again at your scores. So you've got 15 scores, and and if we take a look at them in a kind of a holistic way, look at all of them there, what we see is that most of your scores are below the mean, the population mean. So that may indicate that there are some challenges that you're facing right now, and they're all below the gold bar range, which is the leadership bar, which is really kind of our target, where we really want to help you to get to be a more effective leader in your organization. And already we've talked about some really basic kinds of modes of operating that you've fallen into that are not what we would expect or what we would like for leaders to be involved in. First of all, this reactive mode versus a proactive mode. Leaders are proactive. They make things happen. They see what needs to be done and they do it. And so that's where we want to help you to move to be. And my guess is, Hal, that might even have some more meaning and purpose for you if you were more involved in making positive changes in your immediate environment. Do you think that would help in that area of meaning?
Well, I think so. I mean, what comes to my mind is, I don't know, some notion of shared purpose, I guess. I mean, in the culture that I'm working in right now, everybody just seems to be scrambling and surviving.
Right.
Um, and I guess, what comes to mind as you're talking is a greater sense of shared purpose would be great. Like, what are we actually trying to do here?
Right.
So,
Absolutely.
and again, I look at these scores, Dave, and I just think, I'm ground down, frankly. Like,
Right.
I'm ground down. I've got
Yeah.
two kids, both in high school. I'm trying to save for them, to go to university, and I feel pressure on the job, and my mortgage isn't paid off. There's a lot of stuff going on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and realize that it's tough to keep going when we feel like what we're doing is simply reacting to the various situations that come up during the day. And if we can maybe shift your thinking a little bit to seeing how you can be more proactive, that might make things more interesting for you. Stephen Covey, you probably heard of him. He's the guy who wrote The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. One of the things he talked about was the circle of influence, that we all have a circle of influence around us. Within the circle, these are things that we actually have some influence over. And so there are some things that we can do something about. Outside the circle of influence, these are things that are beyond our control. We actually don't have any influence over those things, and we can't control them. So for you, Hal, what I'd like you to think about is whether there are things that are within your control at work, and sort of recognize where the circle is, and know that there are things that you can't control. Right? Tell me a
Oh,
little.
yeah, I'm well aware of the things I can't control.
Tell me a little bit about the things you can control.
Well, I guess, one thing that comes to mind is, and maybe I've just kind of lost this over the last little while, or the last couple of years, is I guess no matter what's going on, I still have choice about how I'm going to deal with it. And I think maybe that's one part that I've forgotten about. Um, so there's, granted, I think there's a bit of a kind of victim mentality going on here.
Right. Yeah, absolutely, Hal, and this could be reflected in your scores overall. That you may be being very hard on yourself, and quite self-critical in terms of responding to the statements on the assessment. And how ideally what we would do is we would use our 360 and actually ask some of the people that work closely with you to rate you on the same scales and see how those ratings compare. And we might have the opportunity to do that at some point in time. But for now, let's talk about ways that these scores actually figure into your day-to-day operations. For example, if you look at some of the categories that we've got here, one of the categories is self-perception. Another category is self-expression. This is how you express yourself. We talked about your assertiveness already, but let's talk about your emotional expression, which is about the constructive expression of emotions. Now, your score is 90. It's not low compared to our population norm, which is 100, where the mean is 100, but it's a little bit lower on the range. Can you tell me a little bit about your expression of emotions, or is that something that you do? Do you express your emotions?
Well, no, I mean, I definitely don't talk about everything that I'm feeling. I mean, I come from a farming background where, you know, it was don't really care too much about what you're feeling. Just get out there and get the chores done, and do what you need to do. Um, and I think that's that's how I grew up, and I guess that's kind of what I continue to not really believe, but that's kind of how I operate, right? I
Right.
just kind of contain that.
And that's the more traditional workplace as well. You come into work, you do your job, you go home, and there you have your relationships with the people that are important to you in your life. I think things are changing now, and you may have noticed it because some of the younger people, they're expecting to have these friendships and be very social in their day-to-day work, and that's how things are changing. And we're encouraging everybody to consider whether this change might help them as well, and that is to express a little bit more of their emotions at work. This is how people get to know you. Is when you tell people about the things that you like, about the things that you don't like, about the things that make you happy, about the things that make you angry. When people know more about that and they can really get to know you, then they feel closer to you. They feel that you're more of an authentic human being. Back to our transformational leadership model again for a moment. This idea that you really want to impact on people, and that's going to be the best way that you lead them. That you're gonna really impact them by sharing more of yourself. Has do you relate to that idea? Are there
Yeah,
leaders that are there good leaders that you know, people that have been really great bosses to you? Were they expressive kind of people?
yeah, I can think back to one guy that actually was really good about talking about what was going on and also then getting stuff done. And as you were talking, I mean, what was going through my mind was, yeah, the 10 different people that report to me, kind of the age range and the way they operate is so different. From the younger ones to I've got some people that are older than me that I'm supervising, right? And
Right.
it's
Yeah.
there's a whole different. It's like totally different ways of interacting,
Hmm.
and at this point, I don't always feel like I'm able to shift those gears properly.
One last area that I want to cover, Hal, before we end our session today is, and then I'm going to leave this report with you to read through in detail before our next meeting. But this idea of problem solving. Your score at 86 is almost what we call a standard deviation below the mean, and so it bears some looking at and consideration. For example, let me tell you about some of the statements that you responded to. When I'm really upset, I can't decide what to do. You said that was sometimes true for you. And you also said it's sometimes hard for me to decide on the best solution when solving a problem. I just want to ask you, Hal, what is your problem solving method? How would you characterize that?
Well, I think often it's just scrambling around in my own head, swirling thoughts in my own head, and and bouncing back and forth in my own head about what to do in the situation. And as you're talking about this, I mean, I'm thinking my flexibility is one of my higher scores, and maybe there's a downside to some of that flexibility too. I don't know, but
Mm,
I don't in the with regard to the problem solving. I mean, I just feel I need to make a decision and solve the problem.
right. Right. So Hal, just before we end our session today, I just want to suggest one thing for homework, and what I'd like you to try is the next time that you're faced with a problem or a challenge at work, I'd like you to first of all think about reality testing. I'd like you to clarify the problem, like exactly what is the issue that you're facing, and I'd like you to do that with another person. And that can be either with a direct report or with a peer. But I want you to think about reaching out to talk to someone about it first. Do you think you can do that?
Yeah, I think I can do that, Dave. I mean, I can think of one colleague who has some similar kinds of thoughts to me about what's going on, and knowing that she's going through this process as well. Maybe we could kind of buddy up on that. I don't know.
Excellent. So here's some things for homework. Read through the whole report, and circle and underline and bring your questions back to our next session. But I also want you to think about, first of all, confirming your perceived reality of the situation, and resist the impulse to react, and talk it over with someone first. And I want you to come back and tell me how that goes at our next session. Would that work?
Yeah, sorry, I was just making a couple of notes here. Yeah,
Excellent.
I will do that.
Okay, great. All right, well, thanks, Hal. It was really nice to meet you. Here's your report, and read it through, and we'll talk next time.
Okay, thanks, Dave.
Okay, so that's the end of our demonstration. What I'd like to do now is take a look at some of the questions that you've got for me, and so this is your opportunity to raise your hand, to type in your questions, and we'll take them one by one. So here's a question from Phyllis. Thanks, Phyllis. If you get the sense that senior levels are not engaged in changing towards a more participative approach, but are targeting a certain manager, would you proceed with the EQI? And how would you address it with your client? It's a great question, Phyllis. We do get targets, and really, when there is a target, that is a problem manager, someone who is particularly abrasive or someone who is particularly not in sync with other managers, and they want this done. We either do it as a completely isolated project, and in that case, we really want to use the 360 version of the EQI. So we really want other raters rating this person as well to kind of confirm whether we're on track with them. Or we do it as a group, and in the group, then it is a common message to all of those managers in that particular group that these are some of the principles, these are some of the important skills and competencies that we want to reinforce. And we want you to, when people are not behaving according to sort of the new school method that we're promoting, the participative, collaborative kind of leadership, you have permission to speak up about it. And so these are a couple of ways that we go in when one person is kind of singled out. Kim, do you want to comment on that singling out of someone who is a problem manager?
Well, and I think yes, and I've ended up working with a number of people where they've received a poor performance appraisal and some direct recommendations for improvement, and that's how they've come into doing the assessment. And I usually just lead off with that. Here's the reality. Here's what you're facing right now. How are you feeling about that? And are you ready to work through some different ways of operating that address some of these concerns in the performance appraisal? And I think that it's just about having that opportunity to be able to talk about what's going on from their perspective and work on developing some of the skills that will address those concerns in the performance appraisals. So most of the folks that I have found, even if they're initially quite hostile, realize that this is then an opportunity to work through some concerns that have been present for a while.
Thanks, Kim. Now, here's another question. Thanks, Richard. Do you think these scores are accurate, or is Hal just hard on himself? Every area is low. And it's a great question, Richard. And I guess the answer is this is the way Hal is feeling about himself at this point in time. When he did this and he read those statements, he provided his best response. And there's lots of factors that go into people's choice of responses. One of those factors is what they believe to be important. So one of the things that Hal has said is that he believes some of these areas are less important. And you heard in terms of his responses about the emotional expression that might be similar with emotional self-awareness and others. And then also what I think was a fairly accurate measure based on his retelling or redescribing of a situation was the fact that he's really just in survival mode. And so these scores reflect survival mode as well. Kim, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I think I always speak with people about this is a snapshot in time of the time you sat down to do the self-assessment. You're not locked into uh, these levels of capacity. There's always potential for development. So it's not about slotting somebody into a certain level of EI. It's just their level of EI at the time they sat down to do the assessment.
Great. Yeah, and it's a great reminder for people as well. Now, another question, is the leadership report valid as a standalone without a 360? Absolutely. It's tremendously interesting how people view themselves, and that is absolutely a great place to start. In fact, when we do the 360, we're asking individuals to take the EQI, and then raters, of course, are taking the multi-rater version, and then we combine all of that. And so we begin with how people view themselves. And again, as Kim said, it's a snapshot in time. It's how they were feeling. It's what they were thinking. And we want to explore and understand that better.
And
Uh,
I think also, Dave, the leadership report is a great way to approach what's really happening in their real world from the four pillar perspective of authenticity, coaching, innovation, and insight.
yes,
You can actually get down to developing strategies with people that are going to address what's going on right now,
right.
and be proactively planning for what's coming down the pike in the future too. Just right away different strategies for different ways of operating.
Absolutely. Question from Yvonne. Thanks, Yvonne. Do you always do a leadership report before launching into a 360 report? And the answer is no, we don't always, because they are separate costs. And so it really depends on the budget and the initiative. And sometimes we simply use the EQI results, which are included at the start of the 360 report. We can certainly introduce the transformational leadership model. We can certainly inform people about authenticity, coaching, insight, and innovation, and not necessarily always use the leadership report. But I guess ideally and preferentially, when we have the opportunity, we would like to start with the leadership report and then follow up, maybe 9 months down the road, 12 months in one case just recently, with the 360. So that's another way to do it as well. Um, Todd, thanks, Todd. Great to see you on the call today. I love the suggestion of the 360 at some future point. Is it more important to get individual buy-in from managers to push internally for 360, or to make the case directly to the CEO or senior leadership? And of course, there's various ways to go about this, and I don't know that it's that we always get buy-in from individuals before we go for the 360. That's usually that decision is usually made by someone else, and they're informed that they're going to be doing this. And in that case, of course, we really want to position it as a fantastic opportunity and a wonderful sort of way to go. And here's why. And so we really try to do that upfront work with people who are sort of being told that they're going to be part of a 360 initiative, and then we really want to encourage to everyone to be involved with the spirit of the initiative, so that the spirit is that these people are going to be better leaders. And so what that requires is real honest responses, and people doing the best they can to complete those assessments, complete them honestly, and then we can take a good honest look at all that information. Kim, did you want to comment on that?
No, I think you've covered pretty well everything that I would have said, Dave, on the
All right.
360.
Okay. Yeah, let's see. I noticed you selected the target area for homework. Do you do this routinely? And what is the rationale for doing this for the client rather than having the client identify the priority area? I can see the value of both, but curious about your strategy. Kim, did you want to respond to this one?
Yeah, I find most of the time through the course of the debrief, people are going to come up with what they want to work on. I think in this, instance of this sample debrief today with Dave, I mean, there's poor hell. He's just stuck there, and he's not really thinking about much, showing a bit of interest. So I think in that sense, it was a great prompt by Dave to, I'd like you to work on this. But I find in most conversations, as we go through the debrief, people identify what it is that they would really like to take a look at trying some different directions in.
Absolutely, and maybe for the purposes of ending that demo, so that we could get right into the questions, maybe we have done that. Now I see. Maybe that's why I was a little bit more directive than otherwise. But yeah, we really like to make this a client-centered kind of activity, and we really want the clients to say, I was really interested in this one particular area, or this is something that I would like to do, and really, giving the client that kind of leeway is great. I see one hand up, and so that is Yvonne. And Yvonne, I'm just going to unmute you so that you can ask your question. Oops, Yvonne, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I don't have my microphone on though.
I can hear you. I can hear you perfectly fine. You apparently you do have your microphone on.
Okay.
Do you have a question?
No, you answered my question about the leadership versus the 360 report.
Okay.
I had also been wondering about the directive for homework as well, and so thanks for addressing that. And I imagined it would be quite quite an individual ending, depending on how the person had been responding overall to the scores and how it was explained to them.
Yes. Absolutely. Thanks, Yvonne. And I guess I don't know how to put a hand down once a hand has been raised. So that's an interesting thing we'll have to learn for future webinars. But thanks, Yvonne. I'm going to mute you again. Okay, so what other questions do we have here? Other questions? We've got about 4 minutes left in our hour. The screen says this is being recorded. Is that going to be emailed to us? Absolutely. We email everyone the link to the recording. And so for those of you who just had us on your screen and you were doing other things, you'll be able to go back and have a listen and take a look at this report in more detail. For those of you who've not seen a whole report, I can just quickly review with you some of the other elements of the report. For example, this page on leadership potential talks about EQ scores in terms of these 4 dimensions of transformational leadership. So here we see scores in authenticity, coaching, insight, innovation. One of the things that you'll notice is that self-actualization is involved in every dimension. So self-actualization, being involved in what has meaning and purpose for us, is so critical and important for our effectiveness as a leader. That's just what we want to make sure that people are involved in something that is fulfilling for them and has a sense of meaning and purpose. At the bottom of the page, we see leadership derailers, and this is that term that was made famous in that Center for Creative Leadership study, where they looked at effective leaders and their EQ scores. So here you see the risk of derailment there. And then we get into the individual subscales. So for example, there is a page for each of the 15 subscales. So here's self-regard, what your score means, leadership impact, strategies for action, and then balancing your emotional intelligence. So we see that each of the 15 is compared with various other scores that are important to be balanced, and then we get some verbiage, which is a bit of an interpretation of what that imbalance might possibly mean. So all of that is really great. I'm going to quickly scroll through and show you that at the end of the report, we have some areas that may look familiar to you. We've got the action plan, we've got the development commitment form, we've got a little bit of conversation about conflict management and emotional intelligence and leadership. And then the last part is a leadership guide to striking the optimal balance. And then leading in a multi-generational workforce. It's so important that people are aware of and understanding more about the multi-generational workforce, that it's right there. So A couple more comments. What website do we go to for PowerPoint support or other resources? What we do is we create a movie out of this and post it on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, and you can go there and watch all of these. So there's no PowerPoint, it's simply a movie, and you can just go and watch it whenever. And Rosita, nice to see you again online. Great as always, presenting the coaching discussion, most effective strategies, engaging receivers to want to grow. And absolutely, Rosita, we really want people to, as a result of these conversations, to want to change. Okay, so it's top of the hour. Thanks so much for joining us, everyone. Thanks, Kim. Any final comments?
Just a quick one, Dave. Folks, thanks for being in attendance today, and please feel free to send us any thoughts about what you'd like to see in future webinars.
We'll be offering these demonstration debriefs once a month. We'll pick different reports, different scenarios. We'll involve other members of the team. We'll get a female perspective. We'll see some female managers, and we'll really try to cover the bases and really hopefully give you what it is that you're looking for in terms of understanding more about how effective and helpful these debriefs can be for your clients. Again, follow up with any email questions, and we look forward to staying in touch and learning from each other as we move forward. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll hopefully see you online soon. Bye for now.